So, welcome to the first technical session of this year's WiDS Villach conference, again with fabulous speakers and role models in their fields. It's about how to use or even abuse data science, so a quite provocative title, but I think ever more important to talk about in times of AI, fake news and deep fakes. So I'm already very curious about all talks, but especially now about the first talk, and therefore I want to welcome Daniela Ströckl on stage. So, Daniela is a professor of software engineering and health informatics at the Carinthia University of Applied Sciences at the Institute of Applied Research on Aging, so a topic which concerns us all sooner or later, or already. and there she's dealing with assistive human-computer interactions and software solutions. And one of them she will talk about today. It's eye tracking and the reason why every one of us is so stick to our smartphones. And she's inviting us to a thought experiment to find out what possibilities, so positive as well as negative ones, this offers to us at the age of fake news. So thank you, Daniela, for being here. Welcome on stage, and stage is yours.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor for me to start the tech sessions with a question. So how catchy can fake news be? As Anja warmly welcomed and introduced me, I'm lecturer and researcher here at Carinthia University of Applied Science, and one of my hard topics is user experience. And in evaluation of user experience, I'm working with eye tracking technology, and eye tracking technology is something that is really cool because it gives us an indicator of user preferences, so how information should be provided that people really like it. And in the end, it also can give us insights in how perceived believability, so if people really believe what we are showing them online. I want to start because when Anja asked me if I can give a talk today, this was the time when this social media post was up. It is about the Foreign Ministry Annalena Baerbock from Germany, and in this post, it was stated that she said, okay, it is over with pet ownership in Germany. We have to avoid our dogs, cats at home, and even if we avoid our dogs, we will save around 19 million tons of CO2 per year. Even more, of course, when our cats are gone, even more when our horses are gone, and this post goes viral. To be fair, this is fake news. She never said that, but hundreds of people shared this post online. Thousands of people wrote their frustration in the comments that this cannot be how Germany is nowadays. No one wants to give up their dogs and cats and stuff like that, even if this is good for the climate. So the good thing is, it was quite quickly clear that this is fake news. But nevertheless, there are still people around that think this is true. And they just say, okay, this is fake news because they are so frustrated in their comments. Is it always that easy to find out if something is fake news? It's maybe not. This is out of a study where, different social media posts were shown to participants, and with eye tracking, the researchers wanted to see, okay, is there a difference if people get shown a fake news post or a true post? These both are on the topic of climate change. The first one is from naturalnews.com, where it claims that the NASA confirms that the sea levels are falling for the last 2 years. How can that be when we are talking about climate change and rising oceans? And the second one is from Scientific America, claiming that in times of global warming, it doesn't mean that everything is just getting warmer. It also means that there are harsher winter weathers. So if you're not a climate expert and you're not in the topic, both of them could be true. But in fact, the first one is fake news, and the second one is true. And this is hard to find out, even if you're a vulnerable group, for example, older people or people with less education background. But the cool thing is, with eye tracking, both groups, even if you have a good education, if you are in the topic or not, they show the same thing, that there's a difference in how we see or view such posts, if it is fake news or not. So when I'm talking about eye tracking, I don't know if everyone is familiar with that one, but this is a technology you can see here at the pictures, where we measure, the movement of a person's eye when they are viewing a certain technology, or in my case, software products, or in the case of the presentation, social media posts. It helps us to understand the human behavior, some cognition, perception, stuff like that. And this one, you can see here, is in the lab in Klagenfurt at the Carinthia University of Applied Sciences. It's a quite high-tech tool with stereo camera, biosensors, and all that stuff. We can calibrate it just that someone is sitting in front of their screen and watching what we show them on the screen. So social media posts, games, whatsoever, and we calculate out of that one these so-called, how does it work? Yes, heat maps. This is what we get out of it. Not the only data we get, but something like that. But the question is, do we really need these high-tech devices to get an insight about the eye movement of people? So, easy answer, no, we don't need that. This is for science, this is for research purposes, because we want to get more insights. But all of you who have their laptops, I can see them, tablets, smartphones, you have everything we need for at least a simple impression about your eye movement, and this is a camera. Simple one. There is so much going on in software products that this is far enough to get a first impression about where you are looking at the screen, what is the things you really like, no matter if it is content-wise or from design. So eye tracking is something that is really cool and gets cheaper with time, so good for evaluation purposes. When I'm talking about eye movement and the perceived believability, this is not the latest science topic at all. This is something that is around for quite a while. But it gets more interesting nowadays because we have the possibility of AI technology behind, and we can do more with this data that we are gaining from eye tracking. You can see here just a short sum up of papers written in the last years, and I will not go quite into deep in all those papers. I just want to wrap up what are the findings out of that. And the first is, no matter if you're telling the truth or not, when you manipulate your pictures, images you're using in your papers, article, posts, or whatsoever, people tend to think, okay, this is fake news. So when you have a good intention and you want to point out a certain fact in the picture and you just put a rectangle over it to really get a focus on that information, people think, okay, when you have the ability to manipulate this picture, you may have also the ability to tell me fake news, which is quite a harsh thing. On the other hand, when you present your information in a very unexcited way, with less emotions, with some special technical terms, not too much, not too less, people think, okay, this is how experts give their talks. This is true news. No matter if you're telling them completely bullshit or really valid information. It's just the way how you present your information. Another cool fact has nothing really to do with eye tracking, but from my point of view of health informatics, it was quite cool, is this brain connectivity pattern. So the way how your brain works decides if you think fake news is true or not. So for example, if you have a high activity in your limbic system and a low activity in your prefrontal cortex, where your rational emotion center is, I can present you information and you think it's true, even if it's fake news. If it's the other way around, you're more likely to understand what is fake news and what is not. Then there are two things, of course, in these papers. What I will get more into detail in quite a minute is the possible eye tracking pattern and the cognitive bias. But all studies have one thing in common. The only thing that you are aware of fake news is that you increase your media literacy. there's no other way around. So again, bad news for vulnerable people, for people with less education possibilities, but there is no other way that you really do not get in the trap of fake news. So when we are talking about eye tracking pattern, what I'm talking about is more or less these four parameters: is fixation, saccades, pathways, and the length of stay. Fixation is more or less when you are looking at the screen and you really focus on a certain point of interest. Saccades is the time between two fixations. So in most cases, you have more than one on a picture or on the screen. Pathways is the way from one fixation to another, and the length of stay, we usually like to showcase it with these rainbow colors. The more it gets red, the longer you stay at this fixation. Cool thing, no matter if you believe if something is fake news or not, from pathways we can see that when you're reading fake news, there is a backward movement. Why is it? Because people try to validate this information with what is given on the screen. So quite cool. So now out of this, from the eye tracking, we know, okay, where are the points of interest? And together with information in the term of cognitive bias, we can verify, okay, if the eye tracking outcome is true. When I'm talking about cognitive bias, I'm talking about, for example, that when people get older, their flexibility in their cognitive flexibility gets less. So if you have already a certain opinion, you tend to not change it anymore in your last years of life. This is connected to motivation, which is also a parameter of the cognitive bias. Your judgments are influenced by your beliefs and what you have already experienced in your life. So is this something you keep for yourself? No, in times from social media, you share this with the world. So getting this information is quite easy on social media, for example. And then, of course, also social influence, or as I like to call it, social media influence, because we all tend to act like we are loved by a group. We want to be part of the group. And if this group has a certain opinion, of course, this is our opinion too, because we want to be part of this group. Really cool on social media, because this works quite well. So together, combining these two information from cognitive bias and eye tracking, we know how to present you which information, which fake news that you believe what we are telling you. Just a quick example, gazerecorder.com, I'll speed up. It is an online heat map you can try out. It's free. Example of a magazine cover called Mac User. And you can see here a simple heat map. There is one very small fixation up here and the big one down here. So when you see, okay, Mac user was not from interest of this person, but then how evil is Apple was from interest. Why is it like that? Because this person, when you know from cognitive bias, will not ever use Apple products, but to have an idea how evil is Apple, this could be from interest, because when you don't like this company, you tend to want to know, okay, why is this also an evil company? Why I know that this person is me, I will never ever use a Mac, but yeah, this is how easy it can work. So, sorry. Let's have a look at some statistics. I call them cognitive bias statistics, but they are not from cognitive bias. But in a second, you will maybe understand what I'm talking about. There's a statistic from 2023 out of Germany with the most frequent used sources of information by the population in Germany. First one, family and friends. Second one, internet, both around 80%. And the third place was with nearly half newspapers as source. Forget the newspapers. The first two are interesting combo, because social media influencers are a combo of friends on the internet, and so we like to think, okay, whatever they're telling us is the truth. Quite cool information, and they use this information to make you buy expensive stuff. The second one is from 2020 in Austria. On the statement, to what extent do you agree with the following statement on the subject of conspiracy theory? I summed up the fully and somewhat agreed statements of two. The first one, conspiracy theories usually have an element of truth to them. And the second, there's often more to many theories that are dismissed as conspiracy theories than the official authorities admit. What does it mean? Almost 1/3 of the respondents think at least there is a little truth in conspiracy theories or in fake news. So every third of you sitting here or being online have some cognitive bias that you tend to believe me when I'm telling you fake news. That's cool. So you're now in the middle of a thought experiment on the potential impact of a predictive credibility assessment combined with topic preference knowledge. What is she talking about? Breaking it up into two questions. If we were able to combine predictable believability with the knowledge of topic preference from eye tracking in times of fake news where we are now living in, what possibilities would this offer us? Of course, it makes us, it gives us the power to distribute targeted information in a way people like this information to be provided and in the end believe us whatever we are telling them. This can be taken for good or for bad. Bad thing is this is external control. Because when I know what you like, I can control you in a good or in a bad direction. So getting a little deeper into two topics that I'm, from my research perspective, into is health and climate change, both two very emotional topics, with the question, how can this external control, through the recording and evaluation of eye movement and knowledge of personal beliefs, be used to spread fake news about health and climate change? Short moment, we don't have that time. Now we jump out from our thought experiment into reality, because this happens every time. When we're talking about targeted disinformation campaigns from fossil fuel companies because they are against climate science, and people believe them. They want all the best for us. Then we have manipulative messaging. Every day on social media, we have fitness influencers that promote protein-rich, low-carb nutrition. It's cool, but you need these very expensive supplements because it's the only way to have a healthy and fit body. We have exploiting confirmation bias. Thank you to the guy in the middle of the slide. He said dewormers for horses are better than vaccines. I guess I have not to tell anymore. There was also in the 1990s by Andrew Wakefield this fraudulent study linking MMR vaccine to autism, and still people are afraid to get their children the MMR vaccine because they think afterwards there's a high risk that they are getting an autism. And we're in an elective year in Austria, in the US, in a lot of other countries, and people like to put this information out of how to represent information in a way that you believe in their campaigns. So thank you, Mr. President, for that. And sum up, how catchy is now fake news? The bad thing is, fake news is more catchy than any valid information you can provide. Is this bad? Yes, kind of, because algorithms, for example, on social media work in a way that when you are seeing something more often, longer, the algorithm thinks, okay, you like this information, and they will provide you with more fake news. Bad thing on that one is a phenomenon called repetitive exposition or repetitive suggestion. People tend to think something is true when they see it more often, hear it more often. So now you're in the vicious circle of fake news, you get even more fake news. There will be the day when you think, okay, that could be possibly true. Then you're in a fake news bubble, and the wheel goes on. So look only at the truth, and the truth will guide you is my advice, and thank you.
Thank you, Dani, for these insights. Some are very disturbing.
Sorry.
Do you get a bit paranoid over time when you're reading the newspaper?
No, because I think, okay, no one of us is really has the possibility to put out all fake news in daily life. And it's just on us to really say, okay, could this be true? And verify it on our own with really valid resources.
I see.
But it's work.
Gladly. Okay, so yeah, then let's come to the questions. First of all, are there any online questions? No, not yet. Okay, so you still have the time to type your questions in the chat. Yeah, to the audience here, any questions to Daniela?
Thank you. Is there actually a difference between Facebook, Twitter, in terms of fake news magnitude that you can find?
Yes, Twitter was very the first one on place. It decreased a little bit. It depending on which fake news. This is also because the people on Facebook, for example, tend to be older people. It's not the young ones who are using Facebook anymore. And of course, this is the group with less media literacy. So there's sometimes really fake news around Facebook where you think, okay, this could never be true, and nobody could believe that, and people believe. So there's a difference. But to be fair, on all social media post levels, platforms, or whatsoever, there's fake news around.
Thank you.
Quite a long way to take.
Sports in the morning.
Hello, Marvin Hoffman from the Fachhochschule Kärnten, Carinthia University of Applied Sciences. I'm curious, with the eye tracking data that you retrieved, were these all control groups, or are there actually some statistics saying that mobile devices or computers, laptops are actually capturing this eye movement tracking without us knowing about it? Thank you.
In the studies I presented, it were a controlled group, and I don't know if there's a study around to say, okay, there's a difference between the devices, to be fair, but all these studies are made with computers or laptops. There are very few around with mobile phones, to be fair.
In the beginning of your speech, you mentioned that that pictures which are somehow manipulated are hardly believed, and pictures which are just pure and a little bit boring believed to be true.
Yeah.
Could that be in our attention economy a message to all the marketing people? To make boring websites, to make just say we make product 1, product 2, product 3, and no fluffy, nice screens and so on. Does this imply what you said in the beginning?
Yeah, and kind of when you really want that someone believes what you are presenting, of course, but there is a side effect. When it's getting too boring, people will not pay you any attention. So there is something like you need to find the balance between, but avoid this very, very strong way of manipulating pictures. For example, when you're using nowadays AI-generated pictures, and you really see on first sight, okay, this is AI-generated, people tend to not believe you. When you have a good generator and it really could be true, people tend to believe you even more. But there's a difference also on realistic pictures and graphs. For example, when you have just pictured out a certain graph of data or something like that, and you just put there a simple tool to focus on something, and you really make clear in the text that this is why you have done it, and you also provide the original source, then of course people think, okay, this could be true. But this is always quite hard for marketing to provide also original sources of pictures, because people will not look at it. They will just have the first impression, and this is what counts in the end. So we need to find the balance between.
Okay, and last question.
So thank you for the very interesting presentation. You mentioned that eye tracking could be a way to reduce the fake news and the meaning of this. On the educational side, what could you recommend to a university to strengthen our students to be critic, or maybe even to be a kind of resistant for fake news? What could you recommend us at the university in general?
Yeah, so just to make it, eye tracking will not reduce fake news, but eye tracking make us think, okay, how we can identify something as fake news. And as I said, media literacy is the only way. So I would recommend in every study program to provide a course for very basic media literacy. And if people know, okay, how can I manipulate, for example, pictures? How can I set up fake news? When they know how it works, it's easier for them to identify it on other platforms. But this is something that is often not in case of any class or topic in the studies. And this is why a lot of people also with high education background do not have any idea about media literacy. So I really would recommend to put that in every curricula, for example.
It targets every one of us.
Yeah.
Okay, with this, I want to stop here. If there are any further questions, please approach her at the coffee break, and online we will answer them. Maybe this one can contact then Dani directly via email, or find her on Twitter or Facebook. I don't know your age.
Please no fake news.
Okay, thank you, Dani.
Thank you.